They said I was dead. My sister cried at my funeral. My mother called me a disgrace or on a hot mic. But I wasn't dead. I was watching. And when I came back, I didn't just return for closure. I came to bury the ones who buried me. It was raining that night. The kind of rain that doesn't just fall, it slashes. I remember gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The road was slick, the headlights barely cutting through the downpour. I was driving home from a work conference, no calls from my family, no messages asking if I'd made it safely. But I'd gotten used to the silence. Then, a blinding light, the sound of twisting metal, and then, nothing. When I opened my eyes, again, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling above me was yellowed. The smell of antiseptic stung my nose. A woman leaned over me, her voice gentle. "You're awake," she whispered. "You've been out for weeks. Weeks. My name is Elena Carter, and they told me I was lucky to be alive. But the truth, I was already dead to them." The clinic was in a rural area, one of those places where cell signals die and memories blur. I had no phone, no wallet, no contact with the outside world. They'd found me unconscious on the side of the road. No ID, just a broken woman with a broken past. It wasn't until the third day that the nurse brought me a newspaper. She thought, it might jog my memory. She placed it gently in my lap. "Look, sweetie, you were in the obituaries. Isn't that strange?" I looked down. There it was, my name, my photo. My birth date, Elena Marie Carter, 1989 to 2024. She will be missed by her loving family. I stared at the page like it was written in another language. My lips moved, but nothing came out. I wasn't confused. I was hollow. Someone declared me dead. And I had no idea. Grace, my only real friend, found out I was alive through a miracle of timing and a kind nurse who'd posted my name online. She sent me a message immediately. Then she sent me a link. I clicked on it with shaking hands. It was a live stream. My funeral. I watched as people drank wine and told half-truths dressed as memories. And there she was, my sister Samantha, standing on a stage, acting like she'd lost her world. She struggled a lot, she sniffled into the microphone, but she's finally at peace. Behind her, my mother, Margaret, sat in a black dress and pearls. A woman leaned over and whispered something. Margaret laughed softly, but then, she didn't realize her mic was still on. "Good riddance," she muttered. "That girl brought nothing but shame." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen and whispered to myself, I wasn't dead. I was discarded. And if they wanted me gone so badly, they should have made sure I stayed buried. 3 days after discovering my own funeral, I asked the nurse if I could access a computer. I told her I needed to log in to my bank account, to let the world know I was still alive, but when I tried to sign in, I was locked out. At first, I thought it was a password issue. Then I tried my second account. Same result. Then my credit card. Then my investment profile. Every login ended in the same cold message. "This account has been closed." I called the bank. A woman answered. "Friendly at first? Name and date of birth, please?" "Elena Carter, August 19th, 1989. A pause. I'm sorry, Miss Carter. According to our system, this account holder is deceased. Deceased." The word echoed like a gunshot in a chapel. I gave her every detail I could think of. I begged her to check again. Finally, she came back on the line, nervous. "There was a death certificate filed," she said, "and a power of attorney, signed by Samantha Carter. My sister. She had declared me dead, legally. She filed the documents. She had the accounts shut down, and she didn't stop there. I contacted the real estate agency next. My condo, the one I worked my entire 20s to buy, had been sold, transferred, gone. The agent was sympathetic. It was an urgent sale. Your family needed funds to cover your passing. I almost laughed. It was so clean, so quiet, so deliberate. They didn't just bury me emotionally. They buried my life, my assets, my name, and someone helped them. Do it. The paperwork listed a familiar name, Daniel Harper, our family's longtime attorney. I remembered him from my father's funeral. Sharp suit, snake eyes, and a loyalty that had always leaned toward whoever paid him best. I tracked down his office address and sent a letter through Grace claiming to be my representative. I wanted to know how deep it went. It didn't take long for Grace to find more. One night, she showed me a video. Samantha was at a rooftop brunch, surrounded by champagne glasses and fake sympathy. She laughed, loud and carefree. She didn't leave a will. Honestly, she didn't even need a funeral. We just did it for formality. My blood ran cold. They didn't just steal my life. They mocked it, but Grace didn't stop there. She remembered something I had forgotten. An old conversation with my father, James Carter, the only person in the family who had ever truly loved me. He once told me, "Elena, if anything ever happens to me, there's a safety deposit box at Heritage Bank. Use your birth date as the key code." We found it. Inside, wrapped in thick blue folders and sealed with his initials, was his last will and testament. My hands trembled as I unfolded the first page. All personal and financial assets shall be transferred solely to my eldest daughter, Elena Marie Carter. Not Samantha, not Margaret. Me, he knew. He saw the truth long before I did. They lied in court, falsified documents. Buried the original will to crown Samantha the Queen of Ashes. I looked at Grace, her eyes wide with rage, but I felt nothing, just a strange, calm clarity. They buried the heiress, I whispered, and crowned the thief. But I wasn't staying in the grave. Not anymore. I didn't make an appointment. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to see the look on his face, unfiltered. Daniel Harper's office was just as I remembered it, sterile, smug, and soaked in leather-bound ego. The receptionist looked up as I walked in. Her pen dropped to the floor. "I need to speak with Daniel Harper," I said calmly. She stammered. He's not available right now. Tell him Elena Carter is here." Seconds later, the door creaked open. Daniel appeared in the doorway, holding a folder, the color draining from his face like a sink with the plug pulled. "You're not supposed to be here," he muttered. I smiled, but there was no joy in it. "I'd like to speak to the man who buried me." We sat in silence for a long minute. I let the weight of my presence hang in the room like a storm cloud. "You were declared legally dead," he said, his voice stiff. "Based on signed affidavits from your family." I slid the original will across the desk. His eyes widened. "He didn't even try to hide it. This changes nothing," he said quickly. "It changes everything," I replied. "And you know it." He knew. He had facilitated it all. He'd helped Samantha fabricate signatures, erase my name from accounts, and present their version of the truth to the courts. He thought I was out of the way, conveniently dead, and now I was inconveniently alive. But they didn't just try to erase me. They wanted to destroy me, even after I returned. The very next day, I woke up to a dozen missed calls and messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Samantha had gone public. Elena Carter faked her own death to commit insurance. "Fraud," she wrote in a post that spread like wildfire. She claimed I had mental health issues, that I was dangerous, unstable, a liar. She attached edited screenshots of old emails, out-of-context texts. She even contacted the police. 2 officers knocked on my door. "Just a routine follow-up," they said. "Family claims you may be a danger to yourself or others." I stared at them blankly. They weren't content to bury me. They had to burn my name too. That night, I sat alone in Grace's guest room, watching my reputation fall apart in real time. But as I looked through the hate comments, the doubt, the twisting of my reality, I didn't feel rage, I felt clarity. Let me tell you a secret. While I was dead, recovering quietly, with no one calling or caring, I had started something at T. First, it was just a blog. A few handmade designs. A faceless brand with no identity. But word spread. Orders came in. Investors noticed. The brand became a company. The company got attention. And that attention turned into capital. Under a pseudonym. No face, no family name. I built something solid. Something mine. And now? Now, I owned 60% of a startup my own family had invested in, completely unaware that the controlling shareholder was me. They buried a nobody, I whispered to myself, but I rose as someone else. They thought they'd built a future without me, but I was their future, and they had no idea. Not yet. They called it the Carter Foundation Memorial Gala, a glittering black tie event hosted at a downtown luxury hotel. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids on every table, and the scent of money soaked into the linen. It was all for me, but I hadn't been invited. I saw the event poster online. There was my face, airbrushed and softly lit, beneath the words, "In loving memory of Elena Carter, a legacy of quiet strength." Quiet strength? They had no idea what was coming. Samantha was headlining the night. Of course she was. She stood on stage in a deep emerald gown, the image of sorrow and poise. "Tonight we honor my sister Elena," she said, her voice trembling just enough to seem authentic. She was complicated, but she always meant well. The audience nodded, some dabbing their eyes. Margaret, sitting front row, wore a black veil, dramatic. She always had a flair for theatrical mourning. They even launched a scholarship in my name. For young women who need a second chance. Ironic, coming from the people who never gave me mine. But tonight wasn't about irony. It was about truth. So I walked in. Black dress, black heels, no entourage, no apology. Just me. Very much. Alive. And carrying everything they buried with me. I timed it perfectly. Samantha was mid-sentence. And though we lost her too soon, I believe Elena is smiling down on us tonight. "You might want to check again," I said, loud and clear. Gasps. Forks clinked against plates. One woman shrieked. Samantha froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I stepped forward, calm, composed. "You forgot to invite the guest of honor." The silence was delicious. Cameras turned. Phones rose. The room shifted like a tide, uncertainty crashing against performance. Margaret clutched the pearls around her neck. "Impossible," she hissed. "This is some stunt." "The only stunt," I said evenly, "was the one where you faked my death and stole my life." I climbed the steps to the stage, each heel click echoing like a drumbeat. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I reached into my purse and pulled out a flash drive. "Since this night is all about legacy, let's set the record straight." The end. Projector behind them flickered on. First slide, a still from my obituary. Then the funeral livestream, Samantha's teary speech, Margaret's mic picking up the words, "Good riddance, that girl brought nothing but shame." People in the room began murmuring. Slide 2, my bank account closures, with Daniel Harper's signature. Slide 3, the will, my father's real will, naming me as sole heir. Slide 4, a voice memo from Samantha at brunch. She didn't leave a will. Honestly, she didn't even need a funeral. I watched the room change, from reverent to stunned to furious. People stood, some whispered, others walked out. One of the charity donors, a sharp-looking woman in pearls, pulled out her check from her purse, tore it in half, and placed it on the table. I turned back to Samantha. Her face was pale. Her mouth opened and closed, but the words were gone. She tried to speak. "Elena, this isn't what it looks like." "No, Samantha," I said. "This is exactly what it looks like." And then came the final blow. From the back of the room, Gerald Knox, lead investor in Carter Properties, pushed through the crowd. He looked from me to Samantha. "If she's alive," he said coldly. "You're finished." Samantha gasped. "Mr. Knox, please." "You faked her death and used our money to build your lie. There will be lawsuits, audits, investigations." He looked at me. "Miss Carter, we'd like to speak with you." "About the controlling shares you acquired." I smiled. Margaret rose from her seat, staggering. "You can't do this. You're nothing. You're dead." "Funny," I said softly. "I feel very much alive. And then I walked off that stage. No music played. No applause followed, but the crowd parted in silence, like smoke drifting around the woman they tried to erase. And as I walked away from the wreckage of their lies, heels clicking like gunshots in a tomb, I didn't look back. They wanted a ghost? They got one. Samantha wasn't done. Humiliation wasn't something she could tolerate, not in private, and definitely not in public. After the gala, she disappeared for 72 hours. No statements, no apologies. Then suddenly, she came back with teeth, a PR. Firm flooded social media with carefully crafted headlines. Elena Carter is not who you think she is. Shocking claims surface. Insider reveals Elena's history of mental health breakdowns. Faked death, or just delusional, attached. Were blurry screenshots, doctored texts, old journal entries, stolen from my apartment years ago, twisted into something unrecognizable. Then came the interviews. Former friends suddenly stepped forward to say they were worried about my condition, that I was obsessed with being a victim, that I had always resented Samantha's success. It wasn't just gossip. It was character assassination, and then the police knocked. Again. This time they had a wellness warrant, claiming I had made threats to my family and displayed unstable behavior at the gala. I invited them in, but this time, I was ready. Would you like to see something? I asked calmly. I handed them a USB drive. Inside was security camera footage from a bar near the hotel the night of my crash. Grace had dug deep. She'd contacted a former manager who still had access to archived data. There it was, Samantha, sitting across from me at a quiet table. She reached across, laughing, pretending to toast. Then, while I turned to grab my phone, she dropped something into my drink. The crash that nearly killed me, it wasn't an accident. It was an attempt to erase me permanently. I filed charges that same afternoon. Attempted murder, fraud, identity theft. The police left that day with a very different agenda. And the media? Oh, the media devoured it. Carter sister conspiracy? From funeral to felony, the shocking twist in the Elena Carter case. Suddenly, Samantha wasn't a grieving sister. She was the centerpiece in a criminal investigation, but I wasn't done. 1 week later, I was invited to speak on a national morning show, a live interview, millions of viewers. My story, unfiltered. I stepped into the studio in navy blue, no makeup tricks, no dramatic wardrobe. Just me, raw, steady, and unshaken. The host smiled kindly. Elena, do you have anything you want to say to your family if they're watching? I turned to the camera. You burned my memory for profit, I said slowly. You buried me in lies and danced on a grave that didn't exist. But today, I'm the one holding the shovel. So watch closely as I bury your legacy, truthfully. The producers played the footage on air. The same clip I gave the police, the drink, the drop, the crash. Then came a compilation of Samantha's fake posts, media manipulation, and financial theft, all backed by time-stamped evidence. The audience gasped. Viewers flooded the live stream with comments. She tried to kill her own sister? Jail. I believed Samantha. I feel sick. And then, like a final scene from a courtroom drama, the broadcast cut to a live feed from outside Samantha's home. Police cars, flashing lights, and finally, the front door opening. Samantha stepped out, messy hair, lips trembling, and was placed in handcuffs, charged, exposed, publicly ruined. Margaret released a statement the next morning, blaming stress and bad judgment. But I didn't need to answer. The world had already decided. The truth had spoken. And this time, it was loud enough to drown out every lie they ever told. The dust settled eventually. I reclaimed my father's house, the one Samantha tried to sell behind forged papers. I walked through each room slowly, touching walls that still held his presence. It felt like stepping into memory. But this time as the rightful owner. My name was cleared, my legacy restored. Margaret called once. Just once. Her name lit up my phone like a bad omen. I watched it ring and fade to silence. Some ties don't need to be cut. They just need to be left behind. Weeks later, I stood at my father's grave. No cameras, no crowd. Just me, the wind, and the weight of everything I'd carried. "You told me to be stronger than them, Dad," I whispered. I was. I used my wealth, the same fortune they tried to steal, to build a nonprofit in his name. A sanctuary for women like me. For the forgotten, the erased, the discarded daughters. I didn't rise from the grave just to survive. I came back to build something no one could bury. They held my funeral without me, so I gave them a resurrection they'd never forget.